Hello and welcome back to another video from Ad-Apt. Today we are going to be talking about the step-by-step process to making an excellent paid media campaign, sometimes referred to as PPC or pay per click. The PPC name has certainly been upgraded over the years to include a lot more than just paying per click, but the name sticks. So on today's video, we're going to be breaking down exactly what you need to be doing to set up, launch, and monitor a successful paid media campaign that meets your goals. On the video today with me is Brian, as always, who's going to be breaking down some of the more technical aspects of this process. So I'll be focusing more on strategy, and Brian's going to dial in exactly how to do it. So let's get started.
First of all, want to introduce the concepts of PPC. What are PPC campaigns? We're going to be running through what are some of the strategies and best ways to maximize your ad spend. We'll also run through how to perform keyword research and how to set up your analytics. We'll explain how to do proper tracking and perform campaign tactics such as retargeting. And then we'll go over all the different types of paid media services that are offered in the marketplace and how to select the best type of service based on your business needs. All right, so let's get into what is a PPC campaign. So when we talk about PPC, PPC stands for pay per click. So a pay per click campaign is an online advertising model where advertisers pay a fee each time one of the ads is clicked. You've probably seen this ads show up on Google search, for example. Every time you see those ads show up, every time you search, the advertiser's only paying if you click on that particular ad. And the way that's structured is the particular keyword or the search phrase that someone types in is actually something that the advertiser bids on. So us, when we're running a paid a PPC campaign for a particular client, let's put, for example, a bakery. We may want to show up for chocolate chip cookies near me. That keyword phrase may cost differently depending on the area. So if it's in New York City, right in downtown Manhattan, the cost per click for that keyword may be $25 just because in that area it's very competitive and there's other bakeries that are trying to bid on that same keyword. So it's an auction-based system where advertisers like us will bid on that keyword or that key phrase to show up, number one, on that search result and be visible to people searching in Google or other search engines. The benefits of PPC campaigns is that it's very cost effective. It's measurable. You'll know exactly how much you're paying for every time someone clicks on the ad. So you can then determine, is it worthwhile to keep bidding on that particular keyword phrase? And is it leading to customers or paying clients? From there, you can determine whether or not the ad spend should be adjusted, scaled up, scaled down, depending on the performance. And that's where the benefits are much more clear if you compare it to, let's say, a TV ad where you're just promoting a commercial on TV. There's no real way to track directly how many people saw the ad, clicked on something, or performed an action and directly went and purchased your product. But the benefit of a PPC campaign is you could actually see the flow of someone searching online, clicking on the ad, landing on your website, and performing a key action that you want to track. So let's move on to how to create a strategic PPC plan. Lucas, do you want to walk us through some of the steps here?
Yeah, sure. I think, the important thing when you consider the strategy is just going to get your ideas and your goals and what you're after all identified on the front end. We see people all the time who just say, hey, can we get a search ad going for this? Can we get a social media ad going to promote XYZ or the event? And there's 30 days left. And the plan itself just really isn't fully baked or well thought out. And I think for folks that are in that position, you're just not going to get the results that you're after. So when we work with people and even the folks we don't work with, we still make these recommendations. You really want to define your goals as the first step. And your goal could be raising awareness, meaning we just want more people to know about your product or service. It could be something more conversion focused, like driving sales. Or it could be something that's more mid funnel, that's helping folks, move from one stage in the journey to the next. So what really is your goal? And you could have multiple goals for multiple PPC campaigns. But the important thing is to obviously start with, what do you hope to get as a result when you're all said and done with these campaigns? The next step is to research your audience. And people take this in different ways and they put different amount of effort depending on how complicated their audience is and how difficult it is to find them. But if you don't know who you're speaking to, then you're going to have a tough time crafting your ad copy and hitting on the pain points and getting those folks to take action. So researching your audience doesn't just mean, hey, I'm targeting men in Florida who are older than a certain age. You need to be more specific than that. What are their pain points? Where do they spend their time online or when they're not online? How detailed can you define this ideal customer? Because that's the person you're crafting your ad campaigns for. So knowing your audience and their attributes is incredibly important to get the most and the best results out of your paid media campaigns. But beyond just knowing what their attributes are, you want to know where they are located, not physically, but where their eyeballs are located. What are they looking at? What are they reading? What type of sites do they affiliate with? What type of social networks are they on? That type of thing. If you don't have that defined, you're not going to know the best places to go fishing for those customers. And having multiple places to be fishing for those customers is good because it's going to help identify what the most efficient places to prospect are. And it's ultimately going to help you get more out of your campaigns. So once you know a ton about who they are and where they are and what they do, you can move on to step 3, which is to create a strategy. And the strategy is about the different messaging that you might have at different stages in the funnel, what types of ad formats you're using. Is vertical video appropriate for your business or not? Is remarketing appropriate? Are shopping campaigns appropriate? You got to think through what those strategic elements are because it's going to determine what networks you select, how to deploy your budget and things like that. So what is the strategy, or creating a strategy is really going to mean something different for every single client that approaches paid media. But it's important to have a strategy. You don't want to just live with, well, hey, when customers type this into Google, I want to show up. That's not a strategy. That's like a tactic inside of a bigger strategy. So what is the big picture? And define that. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to know the future. But what you need to do is give a good faith effort to articulate this to yourself and for the team so that you know what you're working against. Step 4, you can set your budget. Now, if you're spending $1 million a month, you have certain options that if you're spending $100 a month, you simply do not have. The budget itself might have a very, very meaningful impact on the first 3 steps that came before this. You can't have a goal of selling 1,000 t-shirts with a $100 budget. You're not going to hit your goal. You need to be realistic. You can't have a strategy that deploys your efforts across 20 different networks if you only have a $100 a month budget. So you have to know what your budget is before you are able to really deploy the strategy that you might have come up with in the previous step. That being said, we could probably do an entire video on budget alone, but let's just hit some top level thoughts here. If you're a new advertiser or a new product, or you're trying this out for the first time, you always want to start small. And small could mean $500 a month. It could mean $100 a month. It could mean $5,000 a month. But the important thing to remember is not to just walk in the front door on your first day with your full boat spend as if you have a fully baked, complete PPC plan. Instead, you got to realize that you're doing science, and your ability to learn from the experiment and get the insights are still going to be realized with a smaller budget as opposed to a larger one. So just commit to the first 30 days, much smaller budget. Days 30 through 60, maybe a medium budget. On day 90 and forward, maybe you step up to your full budget, but make the mistakes at a small scale, because scaling up is incredibly easy. You log into the platform, you add a zero to your daily spend, you're immediately going to start stepping up. That's the easy part. The hard part is being efficient and knowing where your money's going and how to get the most out of it. And that can be learned at any budget. So we always recommend folks to start small. You might not get the results that you're after, but that's okay. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to save money in the long run. And you're not going to sort of step right over the learning phase where you're actually going to get the most insights. Step 5 is just choosing your platform. And platform can mean a lot of different things. It could mean what social networks, what search engines you're on, but you really want to, again, rely on step 2, which is researching your audience to find out where those folks are, where they're spending their time, where their eyeballs are going, and what tools they're using. And obviously start there. 9 times out of 10, when we work with clients, we are going to start with Facebook and Google, not because it's the best network or the best platform, but it's the most robust, and we have the highest probability of reaching people in your target market. We know we're going to get some value, some exposure, some clicks in a very, very meaningful and robust way, leaning on Google and Facebook, the 2 largest ad networks and ad platforms in the world. Beyond that, if you have a niche audience or something more specific, should you be advertising on Amazon? Well, if your products are on Amazon, then probably. Do you have a newsletter that you're promoting? Well, maybe you should try Twitter and Reddit. If you have a course that you're selling, maybe you need to be on some of these other platforms that allow you to get, some pay for play action on those platforms. The list is really endless. Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, and everything in between. You really want to start with, where's your audience? Do they spend significant amount of time there? And another key point would be, are your competitors there? All advertising tools and platforms these days, if you look hard enough, are going to expose the ads that are running on that platform that your competitors are using. So you can get into Facebook Ad Manager and with their transparency tool, find out what your direct competitor is running on Facebook. You can find out something similar from Google and YouTube. So find their ads. What are they doing? And are they on these platforms? They're either on the platform because it's working for them, or they're on the platform because they are not intelligent enough to know that it isn't working for them. But more times than not, they're hanging out there because they're getting some value, and that's where your folks and your prospects are. So you should likely be there too. We do not recommend that folks start on all platforms that are relevant. If you have a winning ad that works on Facebook or Instagram, let's say, you can easily take the best image, best copy, best call to action, and then start to stamp that out on the other platforms that you might want to pursue. But that is a far superior strategy than saying, we're going to be running 5 experiments on 5 separate platforms 5 times a day with 5 iterations. You're going to spin your wheels and not really be able to hit the goals that you've defined or even stick to a reasonable strategy. It's way too much work. You're not going to get any benefit out of it. You should fight 1 or 2 battles at once, 1 or 2 platforms at once, really dial in the success there. And when you know that you can spend $1 on Facebook and get $5 in revenue back, and it's consistent, then you can either scale up or leave that platform where it is and go explore another one. Can you get 6x your money on TikTok? Can you get 10x your money on LinkedIn? You at least have a benchmark from Facebook and Google to measure yourself against and know what it is that you're trying to outcompete. Step 6 is really to develop your ads. This is, again, we could have a much longer video on this, but from Brian and I's perspective, we want to do science. We want to let the data define where we're going. And so that just means develop a set of some pretty solid ads. They don't need to be perfect. Put your best foot forward and try. and let the engagement and the conversion rates kind of define what that best ad is. Um, but you don't need hundreds. You don't need to A/B test everything. A lot of the strategies we see folks coming out with and trying to deploy are really like later stage strategies where they're getting way more complicated on the front end than they really need to be. All you need to focus on is a couple really solid ads on your search networks and on your social networks, or all you really need to focus on is some solid ads on your search engine campaigns as well as on your social network campaigns. And once those are producing and working well, it's pretty easy to migrate those ads to other platforms. Step 7, launch your campaigns. I don't know if this is really a step, but you just want to unpause that campaign, start getting some clicks, start getting that engagement. You got to start somewhere. And the important thing is to get those campaigns out in the wild and getting real data and learning from there, which brings us to the last step and the most important step, which is step 8, monitor and optimize. If you don't look at it, you're not going to make any changes. If you don't make any changes, you're not going to see any improvements. So you really need to monitor it. We obviously look multiple times per week. As long as you're on a structured schedule, that's good enough for you, but you do want to monitor it. You do want to optimize it. We're going to break down what optimizing really means going forward. But if you're not monitoring, you're not going to get any changes out of it. Brian, what did I miss here?
No, I think you covered it all. I think a couple things that I would just want to point out is, uh, you know, one of the things that Lucas mentioned is we mostly focus on Facebook and Google Ads to start, just because those are kind of the most popular ad platforms on there. Uh, the other thing to consider when you're creating the ads is there's a lot of different ad formats that you can work with on those platforms. You can run ads not only on Google search, you can show ads on YouTube, you can show ads on the display network. On Facebook, you've seen carousel images, video ads, etc. So the benefit of running on some of these ad platforms is you want to look at the ones that give you the most reach for the amount of money spent. And in Facebook and Google, there's a lot of ways that you can uh, adjust it and use even basic images just to run a very cohesive ad unit on each of the platforms. So the reason I just wanted to point that out is that those two ad platforms make it very easy, and it's a great starting point if you were considering running ads online. That being said, let's talk about maximizing your ad spend strategy when you're running a PPC campaign. So let me just run through the three main things that we recommend you do. One is analyze the performance. I think we just mentioned that as step 8, which is you want to make sure that you're tracking things properly on your website to understand how many people are performing these key actions on your site, whether that's purchasing a product, adding to cart, adding to a wish list, or if you're a B2B business, maybe filling out a contact form, things of that nature. And you want to analyze how the ads are leading to these key actions. You want to set a goal of how many of those actions you want for the amount of ad spend that you have, and then you want to optimize the bidding of your PPC campaigns. So based on the performance that you see on on a continuous schedule, typically what we do is we analyze performance week over week. Then at the end of the month, we do a full recap of how the month performed. And over time, we're looking at month over month performance. And even if we've worked with a client for a long enough time, we may want to look at year to year comparisons just to compare seasonality, right? If there's a certain product that may have seasonality, sells more over the summer versus over the winter, we're not going to compare the summer performance with the spring performance because it's going to be different. So we may want to look at June compared to June of last year just to get a good understanding of are the sales improving based on the seasonality of the product. Setting goals is a very important step. You know, as Lucas mentioned, you may want to start very small first. You want to set reasonable goals. You don't want to say, "Hey, we're going to spend $600 and that's going to make our business, and we're going to sell 1,000 products." It's unreasonable in certain circumstances. You want to be uh, able to generate enough data points so that the ads start improving on their own. Uh, the app platforms like Google and Facebook have a optimized bid schedule based on conversion events. So once you set up those conversion events on your ad accounts, the actual ad platforms themselves will start adjusting their bidding and optimizing the schedule of the ads in the format that they find to be the best chance uh, for you to generate those conversions. Another thing that we do as far as optimizing bidding is we look for what are the best performing cities or locations, and you can actually turn off and on certain cities and geo locations based on the particular product or service you're selling. We can optimize based on age range, on interests, um, on a particular keyword or search phrase that someone might be searching. So ultimately, we come up with a criteria of the optimization schedule based on the particular business. So it's important to identify some of the demographics and who is your key audience, and then look at those personas. For example, a set of interests, search behavior, uh, buying interests or searches that they do, uh, their demographics, how old they are, what's their income level, what's their job title. And if you have those in mind when you set up the ad campaign, look at the performance of whether or not the people that are actually performing the actions fit the demographic that you had in mind. And we do this monthly when we work with our clients. And sometimes you may discover that, hey, it's actually the income level is actually lower than what you expected. And these are the people performing the most actions. Or it's actually, we're getting a lot more clicks in uh, Idaho than we thought. And a lot of people are actually buying the product there. And you do a little bit of digging, you may realize actually the people in Idaho have a vested interest in this particular product because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And you may find that it's actually better to run the ads there because the cost per click is cheaper. You're getting more actions there, and you can maximize the budget that you currently have to generate more sales. In which case, you can then have the option to then scale up your ad spend and reach more customers outside of that one winning location. Next, we have a quote. I think it's important to mention when it comes to PPC campaigns. Budgeting is the foundation of any successful PPC campaign. First impressions are everything when it comes to budgeting for results. I think what's most important is what I was mentioning earlier is having your expectations uh, set at the scale of what you can perform. Right? We talked about performing a science experiment. You want to start small, understand the metrics, so that then you can understand the appropriate goals for the ad spend you have. And once you understand what you're capable of doing for a given budget, let's say if you have $600, where's the best place to put that so that you can test out a particular message, so that you can get enough results that you can actually determine where to go next as far as scaling up or down the ad spend and where you should run those ads. Budgeting is probably the most important part in that aspect because the amount you spend will determine how broad of a signal you can send out for that message. And you don't want to send out a big, broad message first uh, with the wrong ad and set the wrong impression right away when you can start small, test the messaging, understand what works best for which audience. And in which case, when you're ready to scale, you have the best winning ad that you know has worked uh, in individual silos. Any thoughts there, Luke?
No, I think you hit it well. Another quote I'd share, which I think is relevant, is that you need to be known before you're needed, and as that pertains to PPC or paid media or marketing in general, if you're launching something new and people don't know anything about it, you have to make them aware first, drive home those brand values, make them realize what the purpose of your product or service is. Now they need it. Now you need to get in front of them again to push them further through your funnel and out the bottom to convert. So I think being known before you're needed is a really great way to put it. Only a very, very select few products are needed before they're known. if you don't meet that criteria, you're going to realize just 99% of products and services out there have been, beaten into your understanding, and you've been reminded about them on TV and radio and digital. And only then are they cool or worthwhile investing in. So it's important to keep your eye on that and realize, not only you might have budgetary limitations, but you might have some other limitations that just come with launching something new and trying out a new channel like this. So keep that in mind.
Great. I think what we can talk about next is probably, when we talk about PPC campaigns, one of the most popular uh, forms of PPC campaigns is running search ads. And search ads are the ones that, when we talk about search ads are the ads that show up on search engines like Google. So when you type in a keyword or a search phrase, uh, little ad unit shows up. Typically, it's about two or three of them that show up right at the top. Uh, those are the ones that we pay for. Those are the ones that you're going to be uh, trying to show up for. The most important aspect of those types of ads is performing proper keyword research. So let's talk about some of the basics and what keyword research is and what you should do in order to maximize the ad spend that you have. So, keyword research, especially on Google, is using tools. Google has its own keyword research tool. So, if you sign up for the Google ad platform, you could actually perform uh, research on the types of phrases or search phrases or different keyword variations of a particular search phrase and how much they potentially cost, how much they're searched for on a monthly basis, and how much they're searched for. And how competitive that keyword is. I think those are the three primary criteria. Is you want to understand the different types of keyword variations that are available. So let's say if you were a law firm that focused on personal injury, one of the main types of cases that you may get or are trying to acquire are auto accidents in, let's say, Miami, Florida. So you may type in the search uh, auto accident lawyer, Miami, Florida. Well, that keyword may have a search volume of 1,000 searches in a month, and it may cost $10 per click, but the competition is very high. So it means you may need to outbid all the competitors for that particular search phrase. And in which case, you may be at the top of that cost per click almost every time you show up. If you want to be number one, you may have to bid above $10 per click. Now, if you do the math and your budget's only $100, that means you can only afford 10 clicks for the amount of time that you want to run that ad. That might be too expensive. 10 clicks may not be enough data points for you to understand enough whether or not that keyword is worthwhile. So you may, when you're performing the keyword research, you may want to look into variations of that keyword. So instead of auto accident lawyer Miami, might be car accident lawyer or motorcycle accident lawyer. And you may find that motorcycle accident lawyer actually costs $2 per click and it has 2,000 searches per month. So it actually has a higher search volume and it costs less, and the competition might be lower than auto accident lawyer Miami. So for your given budget, you can perform the research on on which types of keywords you could actually bid on that gets you enough data points that you can then determine whether or not this ad campaign or this messaging that I'm putting out there is worthwhile. When we talk about keyword research, it's the focus on quality over quantity. So the quality of the keywords is determined by those three factors that I just mentioned. And then another way to optimize the campaign as far as keywords are concerned is using negative keywords. So sometimes you may put in a keyword that says uh, personal injury lawyer as the keyword. Now, someone might be searching that and is actually interested in finding a personal injury lawyer for themselves, but someone might type in personal injury lawyer jobs, personal injury lawyer classes or courses. And you, unless you tell the ad platform, hey, I don't want to show up for any variation that includes the word job or free course or free consultation if you don't offer that, you can utilize what's called negative keywords. So you would enter into the ad platform, say, I don't want to show up for any variation of my keywords that I've listed out that include the word jobs. And that allows you to save some money right then and there. There's a lot of searches for uh, jobs or free consultation or free trial, things of that nature. Uh, so there's typically a lot of negative keywords that you're going to want to include so you can avoid irrelevant clicks. So just running it back on kind of the focus here on trying to get the most out of your keyword research is understanding the basics, understanding what are those criteria that makes a good keyword for you to bid on. Focus on quality over quantity. You don't want to put a bunch of keywords that you're bidding on that may spend your budget too fast, and you don't get enough data points per individual keyword. And you want to utilize negative keywords so that you can avoid irrelevant clicks. Anything else I missed there, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you missed anything. I think we could keep going deep on this topic here. The only thing I'd add, and I don't spend a ton of time in the paid media campaigns or the search campaigns, but my go-to every time, and I think it's important for you guys to consider, anybody watching this video, is get into that search campaign and go look up the search terms themselves. Not what you're bidding on. Those are your keywords, not the negative keywords that Brian articulated. That's what you don't want to show up for. But Google, probably by design, has kind of another hidden report that's just called the search terms report. And that's exactly the phrases that people typed into Google, which triggered your ad. There's two things to consider here. If you got 1,000 impressions and no clicks, okay, that it might not have cost you anything, but that is not helping you. And Google, by virtue of showing your ad for those searches, is basically saying, we think your ad is relevant for this search. And the people that are searching it saw what your ad copy said and they didn't click on it. That's going to lead to lower quality scores. Google has like sort of a worse opinion about what your ad copy is. They think your targeting is slightly worse, but it's going to really highlight other negative keywords you should include in the search terms report, as well as other phrases that you might not realize are out there that you should be bidding on. So personal injury attorney Miami is a phrase. Maybe somebody's typing in best personal injury attorney near me. And you're like, oh, wow, I don't have any near me's in my ads. Maybe my ad copy should say near you in it. And I'm going to make a different keyword grouping and a different ad set that's specific to this. Awesome. But what if the inverse is there as well, which is like personal injury attorney Miami, like Brian mentioned, jobs. Well, if you don't in advance know that you should have jobs as a negative keyword, believe me, it's going to show up in this search terms report and all type of variations and misspellings that Google is essentially saying, well, hey, let's serve your ad here. Maybe we'll get a click here. When someone clicks on that ad, it's going to appear as if you got another click for personal injury attorney Miami. That's not true. You got to click for personal injury attorney jobs in Miami, which you don't want at all, but they're going to make it seem like you got to click on your keyword. You don't want that. If you don't look at the search terms report, I can absolutely assure you. And I don't think I could think of a single client example that I could tell you that we've ran into where that search report was as clean as it should be. Every single time, people are wasting money on incorrectly targeted keyword phrases that they do not realize are being deployed in their campaign. So dive into that search terms report, study it intensely, parse out the words that you know you don't ever want to show up for that are not relevant to your business, and have a really long and awesome negative keyword list. And the combination of the keywords that you want to show up with and your negative keyword list is going to make that kind of Venn diagram of the things that you actually want to bid on and show up for. So that's all I wanted to add there, Brian.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think we can make a whole other video just on the search terms report and how to set up your keywords specifically for Google. But I don't think we have enough time for all that just yet. But let's move on to the next topic here. Let's talk about tracking PPC performance. So, what are the metrics that we should focus on or kind of look at on that weekly, monthly schedule, so you understand how well it's performing? So, here we have a list of kind of the primary metrics you're going to see. So, let's walk through these. Firstly, you're going to track clicks. Clicks just means someone actually navigated to the URL on that ad or clicked on the individual ad box that shows up, and that directed them to the link that you've included in your ad. Typically, that's your website. So that's the counts of how many times someone clicked on the ad and landed onto your site. Impressions are the amount of times an ad unit is shown on a screen. So it doesn't necessarily mean individual person. An individual person may see the ad multiple times. They may scroll down and see the ad again. They might search again, a different variation, and see another ad. The impression is just how many times that particular ad unit was displayed on a device or a screen. Click through rate is the ratio of clicks to impressions. So just divide up the number of clicks to the number of total impressions on that ad unit, and you'll get click through rate. Cost per click is the amount you've paid for every time someone clicked on the ad. This is typically an average that you'll track over time. So as we mentioned before, it's a bidding auction for every time you want to show an ad to a particular user that might be searching or browsing on their device. And that number may change depending on the time of day, depending on the competition of that keyword, etc. So tracking the average cost per click is going to give you a general idea of how much it's costing for that particular set of targeting that you've set up. Conversions, we've alluded to this before. This is the most important metric to set up properly. Is this involves an actual technical configuration. You have to go into your website uh, and set up what's called a conversion pixel or a conversion tracking pixel, in which case it's going to notify Google every time someone performs that key action. I'm using Google as an example, but Google, Facebook, any ad platform, you have to set up their pixel or their tracking unit, uh, their tracking script so that you can tell them, hey, this is the action that I want to track. Someone filled out the form, they landed on a thank you page. When they hit the thank you page, send the signal to Google, letting them know, hey, someone completed the form. Or someone filled out someone added a product to their cart, completed a checkout. When the checkout is complete, send the signal to Google, letting them know the transaction was completed and how much that transaction was for. So when we're looking at the metrics, you want to track how many times someone performed those key actions, and those are your conversion points. And then CPA is the cost per acquisition. Basically, how much does it cost to generate one of those key actions, those conversion points that we're tracking? So this is something you want to measure over time. Ultimately, this is the math that's going to tell you, is it worthwhile to continue to run these ads in the format that you have today? Should you make any optimizations to try to drive that number down on the cost per acquisition? Ultimately, cost per click and CPA are numbers we want to understand, a baseline, maybe the first 30 days that you run an ad campaign. From that point forward, you want to find ways to optimize the bidding, optimize the targeting, optimize the keywords that you're targeting to try to drive those numbers down over time. Anything else you want to add there, Luke?
No, I think, all I would say is wrapped up into all this is the abstract understanding that, you're probably chasing a return on ad spend. It's a big kind of acronym out there that is really important to your performance, but not every PPC campaign is focused on return on ad spend. You might not be getting a financial return back from your spend just yet. So I think that's probably the biggest, metric that you kind of want to look at as an overall arching analysis. But again, a couple slides back, we talked about goals and your strategy. If you're raising awareness, impressions and clicks matter. If you're driving conversions, cost per acquisition is probably the most important aspect to it. So, Brian and I have described sort of the metrics of any generic campaign that you need to look at, but your campaign could be much more specific. You could look at what's the lifetime value of my customer? How long do they stay? If you measure that, as you should, if you have a software product, then maybe you realize that the users that come from Reddit stay for 8 months and the users that come from Google stay for 3 months. But your ad campaigns are not necessarily going to tell you that. You need deeper metrics to answer that question. And when you have that answer, it might actually give you the truth about, is Reddit better than Google in terms of an ad campaign? But you will not know that unless you're tracking the metrics. So I think if you set your goals and you understand what they are, you realize, well, you need to measure X, Y, and Z to hit those goals. You better make sure that you have that measurement in place before you start spending money and running with a very robust paid media campaign. So these 7 or 8 here, keep your eye on them. Super important. Definitely the right place to start. You might need some others as your campaign gets more robust. Brian, you're dealing with this timeline stuff all the time. So talk us through retargeting and when that gets deployed and how that all works.
Yeah, I think let me describe what retargeting means to us. Retargeting typically are the ads that will, uh, no easier way to say this, but basically follow you around after you've performed an action on the website. So if you think about an e-commerce store, if someone browses a particular product page or a product category, you may want to remind them of that particular product that they were browsing, in which case you would utilize what's called a retargeting campaign. So typically what we do here, as far as the timeline is concerned, is we got to set up the tracking pixels for each ad platform. So Facebook has its own tracking pixel. It's a small bit of JavaScript or HTML code that you got to add into the actual website that then send a signal back to Facebook and Google. Uh, in which case, we now got to tell Facebook and Google, hey, anyone that performs this action or visits this particular page, we want to save that individual's information so that we can run ads to them in the future. And that's what we call defining an audience. So the first step in starting a retargeting campaign is defining those retargeting audiences and building up those audience lists. You can't run a retargeting campaign the moment you set up the pixel because the pixel hasn't generated enough information for it to serve up the ads. Typically, Google and Facebook have a criteria of at least a list size of at least 100 or more before you can run any of these retargeting campaigns. So when you're structuring a campaign of this nature, you have to consider, is the audience that you're trying to define going to be large enough to even run these ads? You know, if you had a very niche product and you're only trying to run ads to someone that's visiting this one very particular product that doesn't get researched that much, you're probably unlikely to get that ad served enough times for you to even spend the budget. So for us, it's determining the proper audiences and the audience lists that we want to run retargeting ads to. We set up the pixel, give it about 7 days for it to begin to build up the audience. Around 14 days or 7 days after, we want to set up the actual campaign to start running. And then at that point, we're going to be tracking how it's performing as far as the cost per click and essentially the return on ad spend. These are probably the most hyper focused on CPA and return on ad spend metrics because these are the most targeted ads you can possibly make because you understand you're setting up retargeting based on a very specific set of criteria that someone did. So, for example, we work with a software company that offers a lot of downloadable free resources. So, when someone downloads a free resource, for example, that talks about um, how to run, we have a software company that offers a lot of free resources, and these are downloadable PDFs or guides. And some of those guides may speak to a particular industry. For example, they have a focus on the auto industry. So the great thing about running this retargeting ad is we can now define that audience, anyone that downloaded that PDF but has not signed up for a demo. We want that audience list to start building. And what we're actually going to show them is information related to the auto industry. It would make no sense to then show them an ad about how this particular software helps uh, medical practitioners. We now have the ability with retargeting ads to actually make the message be 100% correlated with what their interests are on the website. And so when structuring a retargeting ad, you want to be able to segment the audience based on kind of the criteria. Sorry, you want to segment it in a way that you can categorize the messaging. And typically, if it's an e-commerce site, it might be your product categories so that you can show the ads with those products from that category specifically. If it's a B2B business, like the software company that we just mentioned, it could be some of those downloadable resources could be used as a way to build that list. Maybe individual pages that they visit on the site or blog posts that they browse, the different categories that they're browsing, or even if they're on your email newsletter, what are some of the segments you use in the email newsletter? Those could actually be translated as a retargeting list as well. Um, so I kind of went all over the place on this slide. I just kind of wanted to run through what retargeting really means, because I think that's the more important aspect of retargeting. As far as the timeline is concerned, the most important thing to note is that it takes a little bit of time for the audience list to develop once you set up the pixels. And that typically could take between 7 to 14 days. And then from that point forward, you can begin to run the ads. And on the same schedule, you want to check that week over week, analyze how it's generating the conversion events that you want, right? So if going back to that software example, someone downloaded a free resource but didn't sign up for the demo, well, how much does it actually cost for them to perform the final action, which is sign up for the demo? And if that's $20 CPA, that might be worthwhile for that particular business. You can continue to scale up the spend and try to draw up more of these retargeting lists, because that's going to ultimately drive your aggregate total CPA down, because now you're hyper focusing on a segment of an audience that you can make the ads a lot more detailed and focus on their interests. Anything I missed there, Luke?
No, I'd say that retargeting is usually the best performing campaigns that are out there. Uh, but they get that performance because everything else you're doing really helps them work quite well. So if we see folks who don't have a retargeting campaign, absolutely have to have it. Absolutely have to add it. There's really a good reason to have it for just about any offer. So highly recommend it. It's one of the best aspects and advantages of digital ads. So utilize it. You can't get retargeting from radio or TV or a bus bench, but you can't get it from Facebook and Google in an extremely powerful way. So, you can focus on optimizing all your other campaigns that might be upstream, but save a chunk of that budget for these retargeting campaigns because they really help push people through those conversion events. That's all I'd say. Let's just give a quick overview of the type of ad management services that we offer, just to give you guys a breadth of what really goes into it, and the type of things that you either need to be doing on your own or look towards an agency partner to support you with. So search ads, we've talked about that. Those are on the search engines, and people type into the magic Google box, your ads come up. Keep in mind, depending on when you're watching this, the future is going to be AI driven and is likely going to be a chat style experience. So you might need to pivot your strategy there, or go look into ChatGPT and Bing and how you can participate as a paid advertiser in this new chat ecosystem. After that, you got display ads. This is really the best for raising awareness. These are banner ads, most people call them. You have social ads. These are really, really powerful. And they're going to target, the folks that are on social media that meet your criteria. We always tell people, or at least I do, that, you have two types of approaches. You can approach the searcher but you don't know anything about them, meaning this person typed this into Google, but it could have been a dog. It could have been your prospect's son or daughter. It could have been an elderly person looking for something on behalf of their son or daughter. You don't exactly know who that individual is, but you know what they typed into Google, so your ad's going to show. The inverse of that is you can go target the exact person, man, 38, Florida, with this much money, who drive Porsches. Okay, you can find that exact person using social ads, but you don't know if they have any need for your product or service because they're not actively typing it into a search engine. So you can either reach the person or reach the searcher. Typically, the answer is to do both and find out what works the best. Brian just gave you a great deep dive on remarketing, and that's super important. It should be applied whenever possible across search, social, and any other tool that allows you to do it. Google Shopping, this is specific to folks that actually have a product feed. Don't think that people are shopping for a lawyer, therefore you should have a shopping campaign for your legal services. This is really specific to e-commerce. And there's a lot of other shopping ad formats that are out there. Facebook and Instagram have one, Amazon has it. And so if you have a shopping cart related business, an e-commerce business, your goal is to format those feeds and get them out into all of the shopping related campaigns. That is going to be your best bet. Got to play there. If you have an e-commerce business, that is the product that's designed for you. There's also Gmail sponsored promotions. Those are ads that just show up in your inbox or other Google products. Pretty specific for tech, maybe higher ticket items. It's an atypical type of format, but can be really, really helpful depending on what your product or service is. You have localized ad services. We do this all the time. In other videos, we've mentioned cupcakes in Cleveland. In this video, we've talked about, a personal injury attorney in Miami. But that's a localized offering. And you need to have a different mindset, different set of optimization tactics for local ads, as opposed to something that's available everyone in the world on the World Wide Web. So if you have a localized product or service, you need to have a localized effort. We take that on as well. Amazon is a really cool platform because it's less about impressions and clicks and it's more about sales. So they're really driven to get you to pay for the transaction. And they're willing to work with you to get you in the right spots and get as many clicks as necessary to drive that sale. That's what makes Amazon PPC campaigns so powerful. Is all they care about is that big, yellow checkout button. You also have in-stream ads. These are just more media-rich campaigns, vertical videos, pre-roll, mid-roll videos that show up on, YouTube and TikTok and things like that. If you have something creative, if you have a personality-driven business, a video from the founder can really go a long way. And it's usually worth a try. You don't need crazy high production values. You just need to kind of figure out if your type of prospect or potential customer is the type of potential customer that spends a lot of time scrolling through TikTok and vertical video platforms and swiping up and clicking on things. If so, you should probably be there. Brian, this list could be 4 times longer. Anything else that we typically run into with our paid media services?
No, I think you can separate out video ads into its own set of different things that you can do. I think you just mentioned TikTok. I think you mentioned YouTube. There's also streaming ads, for example, running ads on Hulu or some of those TV streaming services. But for the most part, I think today's internet is focused a lot on video content. So video ads individually, if you have a good video unit or the ability to create videos on a consistent basis, that's just one of the ways that we would kind of work with most clients and take those videos and disseminate those in the best ad platforms and formats that we can find based on the given budget.
I think, the important thing is the iterative process. You could have the absolute perfect setup and go through every step imaginable to have, in air quotes, the best campaigns. Then you push the launch button and you're going to quickly learn that all of your assumptions have been invalidated by the data itself. So if you don't report, you're not refining, you're not monitoring it, you're not going to get improved results over time. And the folks that have really, really awesome campaigns that they can rely on have almost invariably gone through a painful process of iteration and tweaking and elimination of underperformance until they're left with the best images, the best copy, the best calls to action, the best landing pages, targeting the best people on the best formats, on the best channels. And if you don't go through the scientific experiment to measure that and pay attention to it, you're not going to get there. You're going to be left with the performance that you started with. And that performance is going to deteriorate over time as the bids go up and the auctions go up and things get harder and harder, especially when Google and Facebook release a new ad format or something new to go check out. Oftentimes those new things come with some additional value or some aspects that can further drive performance. So you always got to keep your eye on it. And, by looking at the report and refining it over time, you're really just going to achieve the maximum results. So don't ever take your finger off the pulse. You always got to keep an eye on it. And although we have one slide on this where we just are discussing the iterative approach, this is probably the crux of all of your performance. You would be very unlikely that your first ads, first attempts, first copy, first landing pages are the best ones. It doesn't make any sense to assume that. So you got to start with what you think is best and then let the data guide you into making changes to in fact achieve what the market thinks is the best. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I think when we talk about analyzing performance and iterations and making changes, it's also important to note being patient and actually allowing the system to generate enough data before making decisions. We bump into a lot of people that we've worked with that are can end up being a little bit impatient. They run an ad, spend $100 a day, all of a sudden turn it off, change the settings, put it at $10 per day. 3 days later, then scale it back up to $70 per day. A couple days later, and it's actually counterproductive in that scenario. It'll actually trigger what's called the learning phase for Google. The system itself, Google and Facebook, are going to be confused that you're changing the settings so often, it doesn't know what to do with the ads. It's starting from scratch over and over again. So when we talk about analyzing performance and making iterations, it's doing it tactfully and understanding that certain changes, especially in the budget, need to be done in a measured approach. And you also just need to let the ads run enough that you get enough data points before you make a decision. So it's very important to have that strategy in place up front so that you know what you're committing to for a given period of time. So that could be a 90-day campaign. You know how much you're going to spend over those 90 days. And then you're just using the metrics and the reporting to analyze if you're hitting those benchmarks and those goals that you're having for that particular time period. If you're not in a very short period of time, and it's very clear that you're not going to reach those goals, that's when you can make a few of those major changes. But if it's not clear and you've already committed to it, I just think it's important to note that you should allow the system to develop. Sometimes it takes a little while for the ads to build up their optimization schedule, to start tracking some of those conversion events, and the system itself will start self-optimizing the ad rotation. So you start getting more and more of those conversion events over time. So just wanted to highlight that if you ever feel confused or concerned with that, that's typically where we end up working with a lot of our clients is in that scenario. They're uncomfortable or unknowing on where to make those changes often, and then how often they should make these changes. Uh, it is a tedious process. It can be a little bit challenging, but as long as you are patient enough and understand your strategy up front and what you're committing to, then the reporting can be very, very insightful to help you make those iterative changes.
Iterate, 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 guys. That's the name of the game with your paid media campaigns if you want to get the most value. But if you have campaigns running or you're thinking about getting campaigns up in the short term, please feel free to take us up on our offer for a no obligation review of the campaigns that you have or the campaigns that you would like to put forth. Just go ahead and follow the link below this video, or just go to adapt.com. That's ad-apt.com, and click the link for the free marketing plan. That's going to end up coming to Brian and I. And once we get that going for you, we can learn a lot more about your business, your paid media strategies, and how we can help. We're going to do a deep dive of those campaigns, point you in the right direction. And hopefully that's going to put you in a position to get more out of your marketing and advertising spend. That's it for today, folks. This is Ad-Apt signing off.